welcome back to the Faces of Melrose Real Estate. My name is Jeanne McAndrews, and I am here today with Christine Rocha from RE/MAX Leading Edge, who will be hosting today's show. Our show today features Lou Izzi from the law firm of Bell Izzi and Chris Cowher from Patriot Community Bank. Our theme for today's show is investment properties, and our vendor spotlight is Mike Goodwin from MF Goodwin Company. Christine?
Thank you, Jeanne. Before we get started on our show today, I'd like to do just a quick market update. Since we're just about halfway through 2014, I wanted to let Melrose know how we were doing in the real estate market. If we look at single-family homes that have sold since January 1st, 2014, there have been 63 single-family homes sold. Of the 63, 33 of them have sold over asking. So it's still very much a seller's market when it comes to real estate right now, and a lot of buyers out there that are still looking for their perfect property. On the condo side, we had 30 condos sell within the first half of the year. 11 of them sold over asking. And on the multifamily side, we had 5 multifamily sell and 4 over asking. So it's been an interesting spring market. It's been a busy spring market. And if we had more sellers, it would be an even busier spring market. So the topic, as Jeanne had said, of today's show is investment properties. And talking about real estate investment is really something that I enjoy discussing. I think there's a lot of opportunity when it comes to real estate. Although I do caution that I think you need to be careful and that you need to be well educated when it comes to, and do your research when it comes to investing in real estate. But having said that, in doing that, I think there are some great opportunities. So Jeanne is actually going to act as our first-time investor when it comes to real estate, and she has some questions and considerations that somebody for the first time, might be thinking about.
So, Christine, how do I know if I'm ready to invest?
Okay, good question. I think first and foremost, it's a financial consideration. Financially, are you ready to make this commitment? It is not a get-rich-quick kind of scenario. It's really something that when we talk about a team within real estate, this is really the time that you need to consult your team members, more so than any other time. Your lender, to know exactly what you can afford. Your attorney, to know how you're going to set up your business, really, when you think about it. Your tax professional, to know what the implications there might be, and really your financial planner. So it's really important to get everybody on board, to have that discussion with each of the people, the professionals that you work with, so you know that when you're getting into it, this is the type of research that you need to do up front to know financially that you're ready, and that it's a good move for you, and really is a good part of your portfolio.
And so, do I need a plan?
Absolutely. When you invest in real estate, it really is a business. So when you think about it, you need to have a business plan. So you need to know where you are now, and you need to know where you want to be, or where you want to get to at the end. So yes, by all means, and it's the kind of plan that you want to set in place, but then you want to revisit every month or a couple of months to make sure those steps that you had written down are actually, you're putting them into place. But no, by all means, you want to know where you're starting and where you're going.
Okay. And what kind of property should I start with?
Oh, okay. Well, for today's show, I'd say there's probably 2 areas that we'll focus on. One would be kind of your long-term endeavor, and the other would be more of a short-term. So your long-term, you would be looking at probably what most people think of is kind of an investment in a multifamily. Although a single family or a condo unit is also a great place to start for an investment property. But it's the type of property that you'll have somebody in there, you'll have somebody paying the rent for you, and over a period of time, you're hoping that the property will appreciate, and when you eventually go to sell it, there'll be a nice profit there for you. So that's a long term. When you think about short term, the word flipping might come to mind. So it's when you identify a property, you buy it, you remodel it or renovate it, and then you sell it, rather quickly for a profit. So really those 2 scenarios.
Okay.
And it depends upon the plan that you want to put in place. Again, it all comes back to what your ultimate goal is.
Okay. And is location important?
So yes, when it comes to real estate, location is always important. But when you think about investment, I think you have to first think about the city or town that you're investing in. Meaning that what draws people to that location. If we think about Melrose,
Yeah.
one thing that pops immediately into my head is our proximity to Boston. So it's an easy commute. We have the Orange Line, we have the commuter rails, we have numerous bus stops around the city. So I would say if you plan on investing and you plan on renting out that property, chances are those people are going to be commuting into Boston. So an easy commute from the property
Yeah.
is probably a really good place to start as far as location. I would also say, again, a town like Melrose having a great downtown.
Yeah.
If it was a property that you could walk to downtown pretty easily, that would also be a nice draw for renters. What I would say though is, again, take your time, drive by the property, whether it be a couple of different times during a day or a couple of different days throughout the week, just to kind of get a feel for what that traffic flow is like, and neighbors and who's around and how busy it is, and again, depending upon your plan and what it is you're looking for.
Okay. And what are the local vacancy rates?
All right. So vacancy is an expense, obviously, for any investor, and it's really a part of an investor's life. So it's something they need to embrace and accept and really plan for. When it comes to vacancy rates, I would say the best thing to do would be to consult your local realtor or a property manager, and really get to know what the local fair market rent value is as well. And the suggestion always is to go just a little bit below that rent, meaning that hopefully you have a tenant who appreciates that they have a nice place to live, that they are paying maybe just a little bit below market value, so they appreciate that, and they'll stay a little bit longer and take good care of the property, which is important.
Yeah. Besides repairs, what other costs could I have?
Yes, so you have your normal costs. When you think about what it's going to take to run this business. So you have a mortgage, you have taxes, you have insurance, you have repairs, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But things people may not think about, first, utilities. Are they included in the in the rent, or are they not? Water, legal fees, accounting, bookkeeping, vacancy rates, evictions. There are a lot of different areas that that an investor needs to prepare for and budget for. So it's not just the idea of paying the mortgage.
Yeah.
It's a business that you're running.
Okay. And should I manage the property myself or hire a professional management company?
All right. I think that depends on the individual. I really do. I think it depends upon someone's personality, someone's willingness to do something like that, and availability, really. If you're working full-time, or if you have off hours or shifts, or if you just tend not to be around a lot on the weekends or whatnot, then you might want to consider hiring a property manager. A property manager, fee-wise, you might be looking at between 7 and 10% of the monthly rent will go toward, budget toward a property manager. But the thing a property manager could do for you is, hopefully, a good property manager would keep your vacancy rate down, and also have kind of a plan in place when it comes to repairs. So things aren't, just creeping up and even more expensive, when you're trying to get them done immediately. Hopefully there's a plan in place for that.
And what kind of records do I need to keep?
Again, my suggestion is always, and this is kind of how I live my life as well, I like to have everything in writing. And I think that's probably first and foremost. Any, whether it be the lease or written correspondence or repair that needs to be done, I think anything like that, even though I completely agree it should be, whether it be face-to-face or over the phone, there should be a conversation, but I think it should always be followed up with writing, something in writing. So when you talk about records, the other record-keeping piece might be bookkeeping. And unless you feel 100% comfortable with what you're doing as far as your bookkeeping is concerned, you might want to budget for a professional to help you with that as well.
Okay. What is an exit strategy?
Oh, so this kind of circles everything back around again to what we talked about as far as having a plan, knowing where you are now and where you want to be. I think any time before you buy an investment property, you need to know how you're going to get out of that property in the end. So different scenarios. Are you going to buy a property and slowly pay it off over 30 years and, either sell it or hold on to it at that point? Or are you going to buy a property and hopefully live off the cash flow from that property? Or are you going to buy a property and then, as soon as the market peaks, you're going to sell that property and hopefully make a profit at that point.
Mhm.
So I think you need to have an exit strategy, but it also goes back to the plan that you originally set for yourself and what your ultimate goals are.
Okay.
Okay, great.
All right.
All right, well, thank you. And when we come back, we're going to be talking with Chris Cowher and Lou Izzi about financing and what it actually means to be a landlord. Hi, and welcome back. We are now joined by Lou Izzi and Chris Cowher. Jeanne is still going to be our first-time investor, and we're going to start off by, we've identified a property, but we still have to talk to our lender as far as financing goes. So Chris, if somebody's coming to you as an investor, what would be some options for financing that you might be able to share with them?
Well, what's nice about that is first of all of the typical products that are available to you when you're buying your own home are mostly available to people who are looking to invest.
Okay.
Whether you're buying a condo or single family, 2, 3, or 4 unit property, you can get fixed rate mortgages, you can get adjustable rate mortgages, different terms, 10-year, 15-year, 30-year terms. Obviously the 30-year fixed rate is the most common one.
Okay.
But again, you can kind of match up the needs to the property with the mortgage that you want. If you're going to keep the property a short time, maybe you want to look at some of the adjustable rate mortgages.
Okay.
If you're going to be keeping the property for long term as maybe part of your retirement portfolio, then again, the 30-year fixed rate mortgages are available. So the full rainbow of products are available to you for financing an investment property.
Okay. What about down payments when it comes to investment properties and mortgage insurance and that type of thing? I think that varies, but I'm not 100%.
It does.
Okay.
The first thing that you want to think about when you're with an investment property is you have to understand the bank's point of view a little bit here. During the financial crisis that went across the country, the number one properties that were foreclosed upon were investment properties.
Oh, okay.
People stopped paying on their investment properties before the property that's their
Yeah.
primary residence. You get a bad tenant in there that doesn't pay for some reason, makes it more difficult for them to pay their mortgage. So those delinquency rates rose, and because of that, the lenders then have to build that risk into the pricing of a mortgage. So when they're looking to finance somebody who's buying an investment property, one of the first things that we want to look at is their credit report. So unlike your home that you're going to live in, there are categories there, but there's many more categories for investment properties because they're very much driven by your credit score, as the buyer. How much do you want to put down? You can put a little as 15% down on single families and condos.
Oh, okay.
On multifamilies, that can increase all the way up to 35% depending on the size of the mortgage and what your credit scores are.
Okay.
So again, it's very important to, early in the process, get pre-approved to understand the different options. And what I've found has happened is many people go in saying, hey, I think I want to buy this condo as an investment. Maybe let my kids live there for a while, keep it for a while or whatever, I'll rent it out, whatever the case might be. And that's a longer term type of portfolio type of property. And then next thing you know, 6 months later, they're looking to sell it because something changed.
Okay.
So you have to kind of make the best decisions based upon what you had or what you know when you go to buy it. But again, the down payments can range. Again, 15% down all the way up to 35% down. So the down payment requirements on investment properties are higher.
Okay.
The values of those type of properties have a much bigger fluctuation. People tend to not take care of them as much as they do their primary residence in general. Some people, that doesn't apply to everybody.
Yes.
But sometimes landlords don't know what's going on in the property. A tenant moves out and wow, the place is not as in such good shape. So the value could fluctuate on a house like that based upon the condition of the property. And again, over the last 10 years, lenders have had to build that in. But what's nice about that is it's still a great opportunity for many people to buy an investment property. It's one of the better investments. If you look over time and over the history, it's still one of the best properties. Can you imagine if you bought a property back when your parents bought their first home, or maybe in our lifetimes 20 or 30 years ago, what those properties would be worth now?
Absolutely.
And where they may be in 20 or 30 years from now. So again, it's not for the faint of heart, but it's still a very good investment. It's still a good thing for people to do. but you need to get that pre-approval done early in the process.
Okay. Now, can you use the rent that you expect to take in as part of the pre-approval? Like, does that help
Absolutely.
as far as,
yeah.
okay.
And it's a very good point that you make, Christine, because one of the first things that lenders like and makes them very comfortable in lending money is on properties that have a positive or break-even cash flow. For example, let's say the loan payment comes to $1,000 a month.
Yes.
The taxes are another $500 a month. Insurance is another $100 a month. But you're getting in $1,800, $2,000 a month in rent on the units. That's a positive cash flow. Makes the lenders feel comfortable because again, no matter what happens in your personal life, you can still have the property sort of pay for itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of comfort then on those positive cash flow properties or break-evens. On properties that don't break even, the lenders have to look at it a little bit more closely because you're going to be dipping into your own funds on a monthly basis at some point there to fund that home. And again, if something happens in your personal life, whether a job loss or something like that comes up, it's going to be more difficult to make that. And in general, people will stop making payments on those type or get in trouble on those type of properties before they would on their primary home where they're living.
Absolutely.
Chris, do lenders differentiate between expected rents and those that are being received presently?
Yeah. The general rule of thumb is that there's three different ways that we look at that. First of all, when we do an appraisal of the property, the appraiser's job as part of the appraisal report that the bank gets is to give an idea of what market rents are common in the area. They can look at other rental properties that have sold in the last 3 months, 6 months, year. What are the rental rolls? We call them on those type of properties. So that the rent that we're expecting from the property that you're buying is in line with what other people have been getting in rent. You can't all of a sudden say, well, I can get $3,000 a month rent on this property, but other similar sized properties are only drawing $1,500 or $2,000. That could be a problem. The second thing is that we can take the current rents that are there and apply them. We use 75% of rental income.
Okay.
So if because that allows for a vacancy, as you talked about.
Yes.
Yes.
It allows for some of the expenses that can go along with it. So again, we use 75% of potential rental income to adjust payment and to use that as income, actual income to a person. And many times these investment properties that we see are break-even or positive cash flows. It's not that hard. Rents are pretty strong in the area.
Yes.
Interest rates are low. So the combination of the two, can be a break-even or a positive cash flow in most cases.
When we were talking a little bit earlier, we were talking about as far as a team and when somebody's investing for the first time to really consult with a few different professionals.
Right. Sure.
And I'm wondering, I'm just thinking as far as a first-time investor, you may not have all the capital that you want to put down, all the money that you need to put down for down payment. So I don't know if this is a question, you've
Well,
seen or you guys can answer together, but,
Yeah.
As far as being creative, I guess, when it comes to down payments.
I mean, again, like I said earlier, the pre-approval process for somebody who's looking to do investment properties is really critical.
Okay.
It's one of the first things that you can do. You may realize that, hey, I'm 6 months or a year away from being able to buy my first investment property.
Yes.
Then again, you may be, wow, I really want to get in the game quick here. I have my financing in order now. I know what I can do. But again, because of the differences between like a single family and a condo investment purchase, a 2, 3, or 4 unit property, your credit score, your down payment, all of those will actually have a big effect on the mortgage that you're able to get. There's many more tiers on investment properties than there are on owner-occupied properties. There's many more tiers for credit score. For example, Lou and I may be buying the same house, and if Lou's credit score is 780 and my score is 650, the rate and down payment requirements could be very different for the two of us to buy the exact same property.
Okay.
So that's why it's very important, first of all, to get a pre-approval.
Okay.
And then understand, because you may, again, be going out thinking that you're going to buy a 2 or 3 or 4 unit property, and all of a sudden you find this single family that really is a great opportunity for you to buy. So you want to shift gears, and you want to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, this is the property I'm looking at now, and know that, okay, now I can only put, I can put down this amount of money, I have this amount of money reserved. And if you are pre-approved and ready, You can act quickly with that. You can have the pre-approval attached with the offer that you're going to make, and then the seller will know that you're a serious buyer who's done all their homework ahead of time, and you've put yourself in the best position to get that property, and you kind of know that the mortgage is going to kind of take care of itself. So it's important.
Which is good because it's such a competitive market, as we keep saying right now. So, even on the investment side, there is still, houses just, if they're in good condition, if they're priced right, they're just not staying on the market. So the more preparation you can do ahead of time, obviously, the better. And I think we talked before too, and you mentioned it on the show, is the upfront mortgage as well?
You could, it's called a forward commitment, where
Forward commitment.
what we can do is actually get your mortgage approved with a commitment letter, subject to you finding a property. It's a little more tricky on investment properties because, again, you kind of have to guess what you want to be pre-approved for. Do you
Okay.
want to be pre-approved for a 2-family or 4-family?
Yes,
Mhm.
okay.
But again, as far along in the process as you can do that, it's
Okay.
going to make it so much easier, because the goal is, when you're done with someone like me, you can really focus on just the property then.
Exactly.
You know that you have the financing in order.
You're all set.
And you've done your homework with who you want to go with for your mortgage. You've talked to them. You understand the different options, the down payment. Along that line too, and to answer your question earlier about down payments, many times people that are buying investment properties already own a home. And one of the things that you can draw upon is the equity that you have in your current home, to use that as a down payment. I would say that's the #1 source of down payment money,
Okay.
besides just typical savings. Normally, so borrowed money that is secured by your primary residence is allowable as down payment money. Again, as long as you qualify with all the payments and things like that.
Yes.
But many times people have built up equity in the house that they live in now, and would like to use some of that equity to make their lives better down the road, to use as a down payment. Taking money from a 401k temporarily sometimes helps. Things like that to come up with the down payment money as alternatives to drawing from investments or savings.
Okay. What about interest rates? Do they vary, compared to a owner-occupied versus a?
Again, that's a
Investment.
really good question. So just to get you up to date, here we are, June heading into July. Interest rates have really done well this year so far. They're lower than what any of
So
the
they're staying lower
professionals
than
expect.
what we
Yeah, I mean,
thought.
for primary residents who are in the low 4s right now, the adjustable rate mortgages in general are in the 3s, and even some of the shorter term, 3 and 5 years, can even get into the high 2s or 3%. That's where we're at today, end of June heading into July. On the investment property, it's typically an 1/8 to 1/4% higher
Okay.
for the same product. As a rule of thumb, I always say that, if the conventional owner-occupied property is at 4%, the investment, same type of deal, would probably be about 4 1/8, 4 1/4.
Okay.
So as a general rule of thumb, all of those products are available at about 1/4%. And again, the reason for that is because of the risks factor in there. The foreclosure rates are higher. The lenders have to build those foreclosure rates into the properties. But again, all of those products are available. You can refinance those properties down the road if rates improved and things like that. But that's a general idea where rates are. Low 4s for fixed, in the 3s for the adjustables.
And do you see, I think when most people think about rental properties, they think about multifamilies, but I know we keep throwing out the idea of a single family and a condo. Do you see that picking up as far as a trend? Or I don't know, do you have any statistics on that, or?
In what we saw is, if you look at over the last 10 years, the majority of the investment properties were 2, 3, and 4 unit properties.
Okay.
If you look at very recently, there's been a trend towards single families and condos
Okay.
for
That's what I was
investments.
wondering.
And we're finding just typical homeowners that don't necessarily do this for a living,
Yes.
looking to buy condos and single-family homes to add to their portfolios. They're a little more stable in value. From a financial point of view,
Okay.
we can track the values of those properties a little bit better.
Okay.
They're more marketable. Obviously, there's more of them being sold.
Absolutely.
They're easy to determine the values on them. So but people are looking at extended families, places for their elderly parents or their younger kids,
Yes.
things that they may want to have. People are looking at it. We've seen the stock market over the last 10 years really go up and down, as real estate has. So people are looking to diversify
Yes.
their investments, and many people are turning to real estate as one of the ways to diversify.
Okay.
So many people feel it's safe to do that and also be able to have those options for themselves or their families down the line, and then fill them in with just renters
Exactly.
if they ever needed to. But it's, many of them are buying them longer term. We're finding a lot of fixed rate, 30-year fixed rate
Okay.
condo and single family investors out there right now buying those type of homes.
Okay. Good to know. Any tips that you can give to a first-time home buyer when it comes to financing, or do you feel like we kind of covered?
Well, again, from a financial point of view, we touched on most of them. Obviously you want to make sure you put your team together. That's important. Understand the options so that you know the costs ahead of time.
Okay.
There tends to be, my tip is to be careful that you don't over-improve rental
Yes.
properties.
Yes.
That's kind of been a downfall from a financial point of view, that many people, when they buy an investment property, they do the improvements from the eye that if they were living there.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not the best way to go, because
Okay.
the return on your dollar always has to be on there. Like you said, this is a business at times, so you have to make sure that there's going to be cash flow.
Mhm.
You have to make sure that the property is not going to be over improved.
Yeah.
Just to have somebody rent it and go in there that maybe not going to care for it the way you would on their own home. It's not theirs, they don't own it. Every once in a while you get somebody in that just doesn't have that same amount of pride.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's one of the things that we see most often as a problem for investors, especially first-time investors that don't have that type of experience, over improving the property, even if it's for a quick flip or it's for long-term investment with renters. They put too much of their capital, whatever they have in reserve, they put too much of that into the improvement of the property, and it just doesn't withstand the test
It
of
may
time.
just be a matter of having Corian countertops versus granite.
Right.
Or maybe having, a different rugged type of fixtures versus something that's more elegant or something. I hate to simplify it that way, but again,
No, but it's
you always have
it's
to have
basic.
the eye on that. This is,
Absolutely.
you are not going to be living there. You're not improving it. You're improving it so that, as an investment. So, and again, you got to be very careful. You can quickly be underwater on those homes, and you
Yeah.
can eat up your equity if there's any kind of fluctuations. If you're over improving and you have that kind of money, again, you're doing this as an investment to at some point benefit you. If you're flipping the property, if you want to call it that, again, you want to look at it for the way to maximize your dollar so that you can maximize your investment. And from a financial point of view, you don't want to do a 30-year fixed rate mortgage if you're absolutely sure you're not keeping this
Right.
property, and that there's a good chance you're going to be selling it within the first few years.
Right.
You may want to look at some of the 5-year, 7-year, 10-year adjustables, 3 years, at a much lower interest rate
Okay.
during that time. So those type of financing options are some of the tips. Again, look at the cash flow. I mean, it sounds so obvious that, you're going to go into it, but count the cost.
Yes.
The 70-75% rule really works out well, because many times when people buy, they don't realize the expenses that are involved. Whether it's rubbish removal, whether it's yard work,
Absolutely.
landscaping.
Absolutely.
You have to build in all of those things have actual physical costs, and your own time and labor and how much you're going to. Is the property 5 minutes from where you're living, or is the property, a half hour,
That's a good
45
point.
minutes
right,
away?
Right.
That's a very good point.
Those type of things need to be built in. Do you have a team in place to help care for the property? And again, every once in a while you may get a good landlord a good tenant that goes in there and treats the property like their own, but that's not typical.
Yeah.
They know they're renting, they're there temporarily,
Yeah.
and that's the way they treat the house. And again, it's still a very good investment, but again, you want to make sure that you count the cost, you look at the cash flow of the property, and just keep that in mind when you're out there looking at things. Understand what the monthly payment would be and what the rental income would be. So those type of things are typical, and I don't say that to scare anybody off, because I still am a big believer in it.
Yes.
I've invested in the past, and it's worked out for me. And so it's good to make sure you have the team and go for it.
Excellent. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk to Lou about being a landlord. Welcome back. Now we're going to talk to Lou about being a landlord. But I guess before we actually become a landlord, Lou, we need to actually make an offer on a property.
Sure.
So we have Jeanne,
Yep.
and she is our first-time investor, and Chris has talked to us now about some financing
Yep.
that Jeanne can take advantage of.
Jeanne has taken Chris's advice to jump
She
in
has.
with both
And she's
feet.
going to jump in.
That's great.
We've identified
Yep.
a property now
Okay.
that she would like to make an
Yep.
offer on. And again, because this is a little bit different than making an offer on a home, I
home
guess
they
that
can
you're going to
own.
be occupying,
Yep.
you know, a little bit more of a business.
Yep.
We want to talk to you before we actually extend the offer.
I think so. I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Certainly, you want to make sure that you have your financial piece in place
Mhm.
and that you know what you're going to be able to afford. But then at the offer stage, when you submit an offer or a contract of purchase, it can be a binding contract. Now,
Mhm.
typically, from a buyer's perspective, your deposit is $1,000. So, in
Mhm.
worst case scenario, if for some reason things don't go well and you decide to walk
Mhm.
away, you're going to risk that $1,000. But there are ways that you can protect that $1,000 by simply including some triggering language in that offer that makes it subject to satisfactory review by your lawyer or
Mhm.
reaching a mutually agreeable P&S by a certain date. Those
Mhm.
types of nuances to the offer can protect that $1,000. But I think more than just dealing with the contract itself, I think it's important as a buyer who's going to be getting into the investment world, if you're talking about a 1 to 4 family property that that has tenants, for instance, I would encourage you to the extent possible to actually visit those tenants. Be
Mhm.
there, do your walkthrough and your inspection and so forth with the tenants there.
Mhm.
It gives you an opportunity to see the type of people, if they're going to be staying in the property, that
Mhm.
is if you haven't asked that the property be delivered vacant, you're going to get to interact with your potential new tenants.
Mhm.
You're going to see how they keep the property, whether it's clean, whether it's well maintained,
Mhm.
how they treat the property, and you can get a good sense as to what those individuals are like just from visiting with them. So I think as early on as possible, you want to expose yourself to those tenants. Certainly, if the property is going to be delivered vacant at the time of closing, then you
Yeah.
really don't necessarily care about those
Right,
tenants and the way
right.
that they're keeping the property,
Yeah,
because
they'll leave it.
you're going to go in, you're going to spruce it up a bit,
Mhm.
modestly, right, within reason in terms of the the expense associated with it, and then you're going to get your own fantastic tenants in there. So
Yeah.
as early on in the process, I think is important, but certainly at the offer stage, if you want to make sure that you protect that $1,000 and get the benefit of whatever advice I can give you
Yeah.
at that time. Yeah.
So I do have a question when you talk about tenants. Is there a benefit one way or the other, or is from a legal standpoint, is it better to have, not better I guess, but
Sure.
you know, if tenants are already there, people are thinking, well, I already have, you know, the
Mm,
cash
like-
flow coming in, which is, you know, a positive thing.
That is a
On the
positive
other
thing.
hand,
yeah.
I've heard that maybe, you know, a
Well,
vacant property is,
The devil's in the details, as they say. So I
Yeah.
suppose that every situation is different. If you have an investment property that has a solid tenant base, perhaps long-standing, very good track
History.
record, then certainly you may want to keep those tenants. On the other hand, if the opposite is true,
Mhm.
and there's been some problems there, or if they're less desirable tenants from your perspective, then certainly you want to make that request to have the property delivered vacant if
Mhm.
possible. But whatever your intentions are, that should be segued into your
Into the
purchase and sale agreement, so
Mhm.
that you have that in writing, so that everyone knows what your expectations are and what the requirements are with respect to those existing tenants. As you move into the purchase and sale agreement, it's very important when you're dealing with rental property that has existing tenants. It's very important that you have some significant language in that purchase and sale agreement that protects you and protects your interests, because there's a tremendous amount of liability with respect to landlord-tenant situations, and that liability can carry forward
Continue.
into a new owner if you don't protect yourself.
Do you see, and again, I'm not sure who, after an offer is accepted or in a negotiation or and the house has been for sale, that many times tenants move out because they're afraid of new ownership, or you don't see that happen very often? And does that change the scope of things?
I don't see that happen that often. Typically, if a landlord, or if a new buyer, I should say, purchaser of an investment property with existing tenants, if they take over ownership, it's not often that I see those tenants leave, particularly because they have an existing relationship, they have a tenancy that has been established, they have a known rent, and more often than not, at least during that first year, obviously it depends on the type of tenancy they have, but during that first year, most landlords that acquire property and have tenants that are existing, they want to maintain that relationship. They want to get that cash flow coming in. They want to keep it coming in. And so,
hand type of thing, that they're happy there now and they're paying a
I
reasonable
think so.
rent. And
yes, and it depends on what the goals are. So, for instance, if it's a 3-family property and 2 units are occupied, and it's not going to be owner occupied, while the landlord's renovating that 3rd unit, that landlord wants to make sure that income is coming in, and then perhaps after that initial renovation stage and they have new tenants come in, perhaps at that point in time they think about maybe transitioning out of the existing tenants that are there and perhaps remodeling those units. But I think whatever your goals are with respect to the purchase and sale agreement, you want to make sure that those are set out. You want to make sure that the expectations of everyone are specified in writing so that there aren't any misunderstandings. If there are existing tenants, you want to make sure that there are existing rent rolls that the seller has to provide to you, and state what those rent rolls are in the purchase and sale agreement. I think it helps with the appraisal process, it helps with your financing process, so that everyone knows the seller is committing and basically representing and warrantying that each tenant is paying X amount of dollars. You want to also make sure that the landlord discloses what there is for security deposits and last month's rent, for instance. If there are written tenancy agreements, you want to make sure that those are attached to the purchase and sale agreement, because again, you're managing expectations. You want to know what exactly you have in terms of tenancy agreements, and I think it helps on the financing side of things as well. And lastly, I always recommend that my buyer clients insist upon estoppel certificates from the existing tenants. And that's basically a statement that the tenants sign. You've gotten the seller to represent to you what the rents are, what they're holding for security deposits, etc., what the terms of the tenancies may be. But then you want those tenants to actually sign on the dotted line and say, this is accurate. Here's an estoppel certificate that says, Mike, I pay X amount of dollars per month. I'm under a year lease. My landlord has a security deposit. I don't have any outstanding claims against that landlord with respect to code violations or things like that. So to the extent that you can actually require those of the seller as a condition of closing, I think it's a very powerful tool.
And if the current tenants have a lease, that lease goes away once the property is sold, or?
No, you buy the property subject to existing leases. So if there's a lease for a term in place, and you're buying the property, unless the tenant willingly vacates or renegotiates that lease, then you are buying that property subject to that tenancy. So if the tenant is in the property, you're taking subject to those arrangements.
Every once in a while you have an oddball thing come up, like I had one where the current owner of the house was selling it, but they were renting one of the units to a family member who was paying a significantly lower rent. A lender needs to know that. Why is this tenant only paying $500 a month rent when the typical rents are $1,500? And again, you want to make sure that, is that lease going to stay? Do you, as the new owner, have to inherit that? If how long it's in place for, and everything has to be in writing. And if that's changing it, you want to make sure that that's all part of the transaction.
Sure, that's a good point. And to the extent that you can, at that point, if someone is getting a sweetheart deal, you want to either eliminate that at the time, prior to closing, or at least have a written agreement that'll transition out of that current arrangement, so that after a month or two, whatever the case may be, whatever the agreement is, that tenant then begins paying market rent. So that, again, from your perspective in terms of budgeting process and your analysis, you have the ability to recognize what's going to be coming in. And then obviously from a financing perspective, they know what the projected income will be once that grace period or honeymoon period expires.
I think we're kind of running out of time, believe it or not. And there's so many more questions I have for
There
you,
are.
though.
Stay tuned, I guess.
There are.
Tune
I
into
know we
our
might
next
have to do
episode.
a continuation of this, but I
Right.
guess my last question would be, since I can't ask you all of them, do you have any tips, again, any advice, anything that, kind of last words?
Well, that
you would-
actually feeds right into a very brief answer. I would recommend, as
Yes.
early on in the process, this may come as a shock to you, hire a lawyer as early
Yes.
on in the process as you
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
Because there are major pitfalls. We can't get into it now because we don't have a lot of time. But as a landlord, it can be tremendously rewarding. But also there are a multitude of pitfalls that you have to really be concerned about. Security deposit laws, discrimination laws. For some people, they think the deck is stacked against landlords.
Yes.
And I can understand that perspective, but also there's a very important role that landlord-tenant law plays in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in particular. And so it's important that tenants have rights, but it's equally or more important that landlords know what those rights are and they know what their obligations are toward those tenants. So I think, my one word of advice would be to get legal advice as early on in the process as possible, especially if you're a novice. And then as you become seasoned, you'll be able to, absorb that advice that your lawyer is giving you, put it into practice, and then, hopefully from that point forward, move on with the benefit of that advice so that you don't find yourself in jeopardy of being, the subject of a lawsuit from a tenant. Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. You're welcome.
And we'll be back.
And now for today's vendor spotlight. We have Mike Goodwin from Goodwin Company, which is a general contracting company that specializes in kitchen and bath remodels. Servicing the North Shore since 1990, they have a team approach where they use the same electrical and plumbing subcontractors for each project.
Hi, and welcome back. Now we're here with Mike Goodwin from Goodwin Company, and we're going to talk a little bit about the type of work that Mike does and how it relates into our topic today of investment properties. So Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Christine.
If you could, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and the type of work you and your company does?
Okay, we've been in business since 1990. We're a general contractor,
Okay.
but we specialize more towards residential remodeling with an emphasis on kitchen and bath remodeling.
Okay.
We have a good crew of guys. We have 4 guys that work. They're all lead carpenters, so they have plenty of years of experience. And we try to treat our clients' homes like we would want ours treated.
Absolutely. And I can attest to that because you did our kitchen and he did a great job.
Thank you.
Now you mentioned you have you kind of work with a team of people, right? Is that?
We do.
Okay.
We have a team of subcontractors, so we can handle any project from start to finish. We've been using some of our subcontractors from anywhere from 12 to 19 years. So we have plumbers, electricians, plasterers, tile installers. So we all work together. The subcontractors know what we expect from them, and they know what they need from us. So we work in union together.
Now, do you find is that a typical scenario when it comes to contracting? I mean, that people kind of work together in a group like that for so long, or is that unusual to have that longevity? I guess.
It's unusual to have that longevity.
Okay.
Some contractors, they shop around, for different subcontractors to get the best price they can. But for us, the quality is more important. And that way, we know the people that are going to be in our clients' homes. Most people work these days, so all of our projects we have, the same type of lock boxes that your
Absolutely.
realtors
Yes.
use. So
Yes.
the only ones that have the code are my employees and my subcontractors.
Okay.
Because we work so long together, we know we can trust them.
Okay. All right. Good. If there was an investor now
Yep.
looking to hire a contractor,
Yes.
what should somebody look for? What are the important items to take into consideration, or I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is always get 3 references, you know, a minimum of 3 references from different people. You don't want to, I wouldn't say shop around in the yellow pages. It's best to get a referral from a friend that has used a contractor before.
Okay.
You know, we get referred through Angie's List.
You
I'm
mentioned
sure
that,
everybody,
which was, yes.
yeah, we keep an A rating with them.
Okay.
That's all referral based by homeowners.
Okay.
We have no control over what's put on it. And so we've won a service award for the last few years, each year. And
That's great.
that helps, keeps us on our toes, make
Absolutely.
sure, you know, we're putting quality work first. But yeah, definitely get, you know, referrals from contractors. Always get 3 prices if you're thinking about doing
Okay.
a project like a, you know, kitchen or bath.
Okay.
You know, most investment properties tend to need something. The big ticket numbers are the bathrooms and the kitchens.
Okay.
If you're getting, you know, a 2-family house with an owner's unit and a rental unit, I would suggest not to go overboard on the rental unit.
Okay.
You know, tenants are great to have, great to help with the budget, but you can go overboard. You wouldn't want to, my opinion, put in, you know, above and beyond granite, you know, countertops, high expense items, because
Okay.
even a great tenant still won't treat their unit as a homeowner would.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's best to
It's a
go with
temporary
low.
home.
Exactly. It's
Yes.
best to go with more low maintenance stuff that's easy to clean. You know, as long as the unit is very clean,
Yes.
up to date, bright, fresh paint, it'll appeal to any tenant.
Okay. All right. Great. Now, if I was talking to a couple of contractors, and so I have 3 contractors coming in, how do I know they're all talking about the same thing?
Good point. If it comes to a kitchen or a bathroom, I always recommend first get a kitchen designer.
Okay.
It's really the best place to start. We go into so many jobs to look at, and the homeowner doesn't really know where to begin. So I explain to them, I could be giving one price, contractor number 2 could be giving a totally separate price. You want to compare apples for apples.
Absolutely.
So if a homeowner starts with a kitchen designer, like you have a great kitchen designer here in Melrose on Franklin Street that we deal with, start with that. That way, when you bring the contractors in, they're all competing on the exact same thing,
Okay.
and that's a lot easier.
Okay. All right. Good. What about when it comes to insurance and that type of thing? When you have somebody in your house,
Yeah.
is that something you carry as far
Yes,
as? Okay.
definitely. We carry. We're fully licensed.
Okay.
We have a construction supervisor's license, the Massachusetts Home Improvement Contractors Registration Number, which is something that you definitely want to make sure that the contractors have an HIC number
Okay.
and a construction supervisor's license. And they can actually go on the mass.gov
Okay.
website to verify that they have those numbers. Because especially the home improvement registration number, it's a protection for the homeowner.
Okay.
Because if something ever went bad on the project, the homeowner has recourse as long as the contractor has an HIC number. You know, they could file a claim with the state
I see.
and vice
Okay.
versa. But if you're hiring somebody that doesn't have that, you really have no recourse.
Okay.
So it's good to have that. As far as insurance, you definitely want to make sure you get a certificate of insurance from the contractor that you hire.
Okay.
You want to make sure they have liability insurance and workman's comp insurance.
Okay. Just in case.
Very important
Yes.
protection for you.
Okay.
We carry both of those also.
Okay. All right. Now, I know just from a real estate standpoint, if I was going and talking to somebody who was interested in selling their house, and maybe I noticed that there's just some work that's been done recently. So we talk about permits, and have permits been pulled, and have they been closed? And sometimes homeowners, because they obviously hired someone to do the work, they don't know.
Yeah.
How do you approach, or what's the best way to approach a permit with a town and all of that?
Any contractor that you hire should be applying for the permit themselves.
Okay.
If you run into a contractor that says, you know, we'll do the work, but you have to provide the permit, I would avoid that contractor.
Okay.
It's best as a protection for you, and as standard practice, the contractor is supposed to apply for the building permit.
Okay.
It's not a difficult thing. It's just a matter of doing the paperwork, submitting it to the town. Melrose has a great building department.
Okay.
It's in the bottom of Town Hall on the first level there.
Okay.
You know, Kathy, the clerk there, is a wealth of knowledge. She's great to deal with. And the building inspector, Paul, is also, he's a great building inspector.
Okay.
All the inspectors in town are really good to deal with.
Good.
But that's a protection for you, especially as you know, if you tried to sell the house, any home improvements,
That's
first thing you're
exactly.
going to be looking for.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
So you guys open it and you close it.
Open it and close it, yep.
Okay.
And always never pay the full contract amount until all the permits are fully signed off.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
that's your little bit of
Yes.
security.
Yep, exactly, yep. Yeah.
Okay.
As far as, you know, contract amounts,
Yes.
always make sure all the contracts are spelled out in detail.
Okay.
Specifically, you know, what type of products are being used, a start and a finish date,
Okay.
payment schedule.
Okay.
Never, by law, you can't pay, homeowner should never be asked to pay more than 1/3 up front
Oh.
when they start the project,
Okay.
unless it's, you know, specific for some building materials. But
Okay. That's good
the
to
same
know.
thing on the mass.gov website. There's the state requires specific things on a contract, so it's worth it for your homeowners to look at that site, because the state wants specific detail just as a protection to the homeowner.
Oh, so there are certain items that have to be on a
That
contract.
have
as
to
well.
be on the contract. Yep.
Okay. All
As
right.
far as you know, those things I just listed, start date, materials, even stuff as far as, you know, what happens if there's a discrepancy, you know.
Okay.
So definitely make sure it's a detailed contract, not just a piece of paper with handwritten notes.
Okay. All right. Good. And what was that site again? That they-
It's on mass.gov.
Mass.gov.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Good.
Yeah.
I know you talked about, you know, the idea that now if you have you had mentioned a multifamily and
Yep.
you have an owner's unit and a rental unit, and the idea of keeping it simple,
Yes.
you know, and clean and nice. Any other tips that you might have for somebody who's going in to renovate a home, whether it be
Yep.
to live there or truly just as an investment, a rental property?
Yep. As a rental property, if it's a multifamily,
Mm-hmm.
when you go to look at it, you're probably going to want to make sure that it's on separate utilities, each unit.
Okay, good.
That way there you're not getting a discrepancy with the tenants on who's paying for what.
Absolutely.
You know, that's one of the things to look for. As far as if someone's looking to buy a house as just as an investment property, a single-family house, thinking
Yes.
about its own, you could spend a little more money to fix up really nice, because it's going to be an investment where it's going to be turned over, usually
Okay.
in a few years.
Okay.
You know, most of the stuff, like I said, the kitchen, the bathrooms are the big ticket items.
Yes.
Fresh coat of paint, you know, stripping wallpaper, that's, you know, inexpensive to do,
Okay.
relatively speaking,
Okay.
but it makes wonders in the house.
Absolutely.
Old drafty windows, just for energy value alone, it's worth putting in vinyl replacements.
Okay.
It's not overly exorbitant in
Okay.
price. So I would look for those type of things.
Okay.
You know, obviously, anybody that's going to buy a house at all should automatically definitely get a home inspection first
Okay.
by a qualified home inspector.
So let me ask you this, and hopefully I'm not putting you on the spot, because I will have on occasion somebody say to me, well, I'm going to do so much work to this house. Can't I just have my contractor come through versus the home inspector? How do you feel about that? What if somebody asked you to do a home inspection
Yeah.
as far as?
I'm not certified to be a home inspector.
Yes.
I have people that I'll look at the houses for them, just, you know, to see if I notice something.
Okay.
But I would still recommend that they actually hire a certified home inspector.
Okay.
Because they're trained in every aspect as far as the heating and air conditioning, what to look for plumbing, faulty wiring, that type of stuff. Where I'm a general contractor, I have a good basic knowledge of it all.
Yes.
But I don't specialize in each field.
Okay.
Where they get regular training on what to look for and the latest hazards on, you know, faulty things.
Okay.
So definitely, even if you have a friend that's a contractor, it's definitely worth hiring a home inspector.
All right. All right. Good. And I guess just one last, when you talk, because I know you do a lot of kitchens and baths. If I was to invest in a property and I wanted to do not high end, but you know, kind of nice, middle of the road to rent out, how long does that kind of renovation take? Like if I wanted to, you know, purchase it and kind of try and get it on the market right away, you know, as
Yep.
far as a rental.
If you're going with, you know, basic cabinets, you know, basic countertops, everybody's doing granite or quartz these days.
Yes.
usually takes about anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to do a full kitchen remodel.
Okay,
And that's from the time the cabinets come.
okay,
Depending on, usually takes a couple weeks. Just, I encourage people, don't rush the design process because you're going to be living with it. So it's better to take an extra couple of weeks
okay,
to get the design the way you want.
okay.
Once the cabinets are ordered, and the cabinets come in, we don't start any job until everything's there. The cabinets, tile,
So it's not
plumbing
piecemeal,
fixtures.
it's
So once
one
we
project.
start, we go right through to finish.
Okay,
We've all heard the horror stories of kitchen remodels taking 6 months.
yes.
We eliminate that by doing it, usually 4 to 6 weeks,
Okay.
start to finish.
Okay, all right, great. Well, good. Well, thank you so much,
Oh, you're
Mike.
welcome. Thank
I
you.
really,
Oh.
I appreciate your time and you being
Sure.
here with us. That was great information. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. All right, and we'll be back.
This concludes our show for today. Thank you for joining us for the Faces of Melrose Real Estate. Please leave any suggestions or comments on our Facebook page. The artwork was again provided by Follow Your Art, located in Melrose Square. And you can tune in to us on Thursday evenings at 8 o'clock, Saturday evenings at 7 o'clock, and Wednesday mornings at 11 o'clock. Thanks.